Hello mathematicians, today's video is on reducing and comparing fractions. So our objective is students will be able to compare and reduce fractions using the LCMs. Go ahead and pause the video if you need to in order to copy down the objective. Okay, before we go over how to do this objective, let's go over some symbols that we're going to be using throughout the video. And those are inequality symbols. So just as a reminder, less than is a V that opens to the right. More than is a sideways V that opens to the left. Less than or equal to is a sideways V with a line underneath. More than or equal to is also a sideways V with a line underneath. And equal to is just an equal sign. One quick way for you to kind of remember what's happening when we use less than or more than, especially because it can be a little confusing. And let's take the numbers 3 and 5. The smaller number always eats the bigger number. The smaller number always eats the bigger number. So when we're looking at this 3 and 5, we're thinking, okay, which number is smaller? 3 is smaller, so 3 is going to be less than 5. I want you to imagine that this V had teeth in it, okay? Notice that it's eating the bigger number. So this says 3 is less than 5. The V is going to eat the bigger number. Okay, so let's go through a couple of examples. We're looking at example 1. The directions say use inequality symbols to show which fraction is greater. Use inequality symbols to show which fraction is greater. When I look at this, we're going to have to make these two fractions have the common denominator. Right now we can't tell which one is greater because they have different denominators. So we have to make them have common denominators. Now we learned how to do this in Objective 110B. And so I'm not going to show you how to do this. I will walk you through the steps. The first thing we want to do is find the LCM. And again, okay, go ahead and on your own, try and find the LCM of 4 and 12 like we did in Objective 110B. Go ahead and pause the video and try to find the LCM of 4 and 12. Okay, you should have gotten that the LCM of 4 and 12 is 12. Now, just like we did in 110B, I'm going to have to convert these fractions. So I have 2/4 and I have 4/12. And I want to make them have the same denominator, my LCM 12. So I'm thinking, okay, let me actually write this over here so we have a little bit more room. We have 2/4, we have 4/12. I know that I want my new denominator to be 12. So what times 4 will give me 12? 3. So I'm going to multiply my numerator and my denominator by 3. So 2 times 3 is 6. And what times what will give me 12 on my bottom? I'm just going to multiply by 1. So I have 4/1. So we have 4/12 and 6/12. Let's go ahead and write those again. 4/12 and 6/12. Now I need to compare these two fractions. Okay, which one is equivalent? Which one is greater than the other? When we do this, we want to write these out with the original fractions. Okay, so 4/12. That one was with 4/12. So that one went right here. Right? 6/12. That was with 2/4. That one went right here. Now looking at these, which is larger? 6 is larger, so that means that 6 is greater than 4. 6 is greater than 4. So if I go back up to my original problem, I'm going to put my greater than sign in between 2/4 and 4/12. And this is my answer. 2/4 is greater than 4/12. Okay? Put a little key point for yourself that when you do these, you want to use original numbers. You want to use the original numbers. All right, let's go ahead and do another example. Let's go ahead and look at example number 2. So we are given 5/6 and 2/5. Go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to find the least common denominator for 5/6 and 2/5. Alright, you should have gotten that the LCM was 30. So now that we know that the LCM is 30, let's go ahead and let's convert our fractions. We had 5/6 and 2/5. Okay, again, I'm going kind of quickly through this, but you learned this already in Objective 110B, so you should know how to do this. How do I get 5 to become 30? I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 6. How do I get 6 to become 30? I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 5. So 5 times 5 is 25. 2 times 6 is 12. So our two fractions are 25 over 30 and 12 over 30. Now remember, we want to use our original numbers, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write them right above. 25 over 30 was my 5 over 6, and 12 over 30 was my 2/5. And I'm looking and saying, okay, which one is greater? Is 12 greater or is 25 greater? 12 is the smaller number, so I'm going to write a less than symbol. Okay, now we could read this two ways. 25 over 30 is greater than 12 over 30, or if you want to read it from the right to the left, 12 over 30 is less than 25 over 30. So our answer is that 5/6 is greater than 2/5, or if you read it the other way, 2/5 is less than 5/6. Okay, I want you to go ahead and try a couple practice. So go ahead and looking at practice 1 and practice 2, pause the video, and I want you to try these two practices. Alright, here are your answers for practice 1 and practice 2. We should have gotten that 3/4 was greater than 4/15. 3/4 is greater than 4/15. And then for practice 2, that 5/7 is less than 4/5. 5/7 is less than 4/5. Alright, let's go ahead on to practice number 3, which is going to require us to write our numbers from least to greatest. So I'm going to go down to practice 3. And first thing we're going to do is, same process. We need to find what the least common multiple of our denominators are. And we have the denominators 4, 8, and 12. So I want you to go ahead, pause the video, and find the least common multiple of 4, 8, and 12. Okay, so you should have had an LCM of 24. So our first step is to change our fractions so that they all have the same common denominator. So I'm going to zoom in a bit. And we're going to change 3/4, 5/8, and 7/12. And remember, we're thinking just like we did before, okay, we want our new denominators to be 24. Okay, this is going back to Objective 110B. So what times 4 will give us 24? We can do 4 times 6. So we'll multiply the numerator and the denominator by 6. That gives us 18. What times 8 gives us 24? That's 3. So I'm going to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 3. We get 15. And what times 12 gives us 24? We're going to multiply by 2. So we have 14 over 24. Alright, now I'm going to rewrite my numbers from least to greatest. And in order to do that, we should always use the original numbers. So I want you to put a little key point here. Rewrite with original numbers. Rewrite with original numbers. So I'm going to rewrite this for you so that you can see the original number next to the new fraction we converted it to. So for example, 3/4, that was the same as 18 over 24. Okay, and then we had 5/8, that was the same as 15 over 24. And then we had 7/12, that was the same as 14 over 24. So if I want to write these from least to greatest, I'm going to find the smallest fraction. So we have 18 over 24, 15 over 24, and 14 over 24. 14 is the smallest, so we'll have 14 over 24 is our first, but and I just started to make a mistake. We want to rewrite it with its original numbers. So originally that was 7/12. So we took care of this one. Our next one is between 18 and 15. 15 is smaller, so I'm going to write that one next. We're writing the original fraction 5/8. And then finally, 18 is our last one. We're writing it with the original fraction, and we get 3/4. Okay? So it's like what we've done before, but taking it just to the next level. Right, so I want you to go ahead and pause the video and go ahead and try practice B, practice 3B, the one right below. When you're ready, press play and you can see the answers. All right, here are your answers. So you should have had, from order on least to greatest, 1/2, 3/5, and 3/4. You can go ahead and look at this work if you need to, but remember when we rewrite, we should use the original numbers, so the numbers that we were given. All right, we're going to go ahead down to the next section of notes that says writing equivalent fractions. So writing equivalent fractions. Now, when we talk about the word equivalent, okay, our first example says find a fraction that is equivalent to 6/9. Okay, think about for a second by yourself, what does the word equivalent mean? What does the word equivalent mean? Okay, the word equivalent means equal. Okay, we're looking for fractions that are equal to 6/9. So what we're doing basically is figuring out what is a fraction that is equal to 6/9. Now we have a couple of options. Okay, if you see up here, it says we can either multiply or divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number. That's going to give us an equivalent fraction. So let's first do dividing. Okay, let's take 6/9. Now we've talked previously in another objective about how to reduce a fraction. Okay, that's what you're doing when you divide. Okay, what would be the greatest common factor of 6 and 9 that we could reduce this? Go ahead and pause the video and find the greatest common factor. All right, you should have found that the GCF of these two numbers is 3. So to find an equivalent fraction, what we can do is divide the numerator and the denominator by 3. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide the numerator and the denominator by 3. And my new fraction is 2/3. Okay, 2/3 is equal to 6/9. They're equivalent fractions. So that's how we can simplify a fraction. If we want to make the fraction bigger, we can also multiply the fraction. So let's take our fraction 6/9. And to find something equivalent, we can basically take this fraction and multiply it by any number we want. And that will be equivalent, as long as we multiply the numerator and the denominator. So I'm just going to pick the number 5. All right, so let's try 6 times 5, that's 30. And 9 times 5, that's 45. So we can say that 6/9, 2/3, and 30/45, those are all equal to each other. Now, there's a way we can check that we've actually found an equivalent fraction, okay? And I want you to put a little key point here. The way we're going to check that we've actually found an equivalent fraction is we're going to check with a decimal. If we change our number into a decimal, we should get the same decimal for each. So let's go ahead and let's do that. First, let's do 6 divided by 9. So on your calculators, do 6 divided by 9. You should get 0.6 repeating, okay? Now, if we divide 2 divided by 3, we should get the same thing. All right, 2 divided by 3, that gives us 0.6 repeating. That's equivalent. And let's try 30 divided by 45. 30 divided by 45 is 0.6 repeating. So all of those are, in fact, equivalent fractions. Okay, let's do one more example. Let's do example 2. So now, looking at example 2, we have find a fraction that is equivalent to 3/10. Find a fraction that is equivalent to 3/10. So first, I'm going to look and I'm say, okay, 3/10. Let's see if I can reduce that. Let's see if I can simplify that. So go ahead and look and see what is the greatest common factor of 3 and 10. Pause the video and find the greatest common factor of 3 and 10. All right, we should have seen that the GCF of 3 and 10 is 1. Now that doesn't really help us at all, because if we do 3 divided by 1 and 10 divided by 1, we're going to get 3/10, which is the same fraction. So in order to find an equivalent fraction, the only thing we can do is make this fraction bigger. So if I have 3/10, I'm just going to multiply it by any number I want. I'm going to do 3 times 7. Okay, I'm multiplying the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So 3 times 7 is 21, and 10 times 7 is 70. Now, I want to show you that this works. I'm going to kind of section this off. Let's pick another number. Let's take 3/10, and let's multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 2. Well, 3 times 2 is 6, and 10 times 2 is 20. So 21 over 7, 70, 6 over 20, and 3 over 10, those are all equivalent fractions. We can check that by making them into decimals. So let's try 3 divided by 10 is 0.3. Now let's see if it works everywhere else. 6 divided by 20, that's also 0.3. And let's try our last one, 21 divided by 70, that is also 0.3. So all of these that I'm circling are, in fact, equivalent fractions. Okay, I want you to go ahead and I want you to try these 4 practices. Go ahead and pause the video, try these 4 practices, and then when you're ready, press play. Okay, I'm going to show you on these what maybe you could have had this. I'm going to show you if you could reduce. But because to find equivalent fractions, you could literally multiply your numerator and your denominator by almost any number, we might have different answers, right? I'm just going to tell you right now that 4 over 9 cannot be reduced. So 4 over 9 is the smallest number you could have. Now you could have anything bigger. Okay, we could have, for example, multiplied the top and the bottom by 2, and that gives us 8 over 18. What you can do right now to check, though, is for any equivalent fraction you got, 4 over 9 should have been 0.4 repeating. So 8 over 9, that's also 0.4 repeating. This is your way to check. Double check your fractions and make sure they have the right decimal. Okay? All right, 6 over 9. You could have had any fraction larger than 6 over 9 with a bigger numerator and a bigger denominator. To reduce that, you might have had 2 thirds. Okay, 2 thirds would be that fraction reduced. Right? And all of your fractions should have equaled 0.6 repeating. All of your fractions should have been 0.6 repeating. Okay? And then let's go ahead and do these last 2. For 5 over 12, that's as small as you can get it. You can check your fractions by checking that all of them equaled 0.416 repeating. And for 3 over 10, that's as reduced as it can get, and all your fractions should have been 0.3. Okay, we're going to do one last thing, and that is I want you to try a couple of critical thinking problems. So I want you to scroll back up to the top. Okay? I want you to go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to try practice 4 and practice 5. Now, you should go ahead and pause the video, try these, make sure you're using cups so you can see what you know and read the question thoroughly, and then we'll go over the answers. All right, so for practice 4, Tanya's looking for shoes in her closet. We saw that 1/3 of her shoes are black, 2/5 are brown. What does she have more, black or brown shoes? So we're answering the question, does she have more black or more brown? We should have taken these 2 fractions. We had 1/3 were black and 2/5 were brown. And we should have converted them into fractions that had the same denominator. So the LCM of 3 and 5 is 15. So we should have multiplied this by 5. That gives us 5 over 15. And we should have multiplied this by 3. That gives us 6 over 15. So our larger number is 6 over 15, which means she has more brown shoes. So she has more brown shoes. Okay, let's go ahead and quickly go through the next one. So it says, in a recent survey, 2 out of the 5 people surveyed said their favorite food was pizza. 1/4 said it was hot dogs, and 1/3 said it was popcorn. So we have, and it's good to go ahead and write this out. We're solving what was the favorite food for the guests. So it's a good idea to write out what you have on the side. So we had pizza was our first one. So I'm going to put PI for pizza. That was 2/5. We had hot dogs. Okay, and actually I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we have a little bit more room. We had hot dogs. I'm going to put an H for hot dogs, which was 1/4. And then we had popcorn, which was 1/3. third. Now, we need to find a lowest common denominator or a least common multiple. So go ahead and pause the video and find what the lowest or least common denominator or multiple would be for 5, 4, and 3. Okay, we should have gotten 60. So we want our LCM to be 60. So we have to ask ourselves, okay, if I want to get 5 to become 60, what do I need to multiply it by? I need to do 5 times 12, so I'm going to multiply the denominator and the numerator by 12. 12 times 2 is 24, so I have 24 over 60. Okay, what times 4 will give me 60? That'll be 15. So I'm going to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 15, and that will give me 1 times 15 is 15. And then lastly, what times 3 will give me 60? That would be 20 times the numerator and denominator by 20, and I get 20 over 60. Now we're looking for which one of these is the largest, which would be 24 out of 60. So the food that people like the most is pizza. Okay, go ahead. This is the end of our video. If you have any questions, please write them down and come to practice, ready to practice the objective in class.